Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're taking a break today from all the tax and regulations and all those sort of changes because the economy, or the Australian economy at least, is just starting to open up. And people need to make some decisions about how they're going to reopen their business, what changes they're going to make. So earlier today I interviewed Dean Marinac. Dean is one of Australia's leading consultants to small business. Let's take a look.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show, Dean. I appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Great to be here.
Right. Okay, mate, I was saying earlier in the intro that a lot of businesses are now just starting to look at opening up again. The green light is coming on in the economy in dribs and drabs.
Absolutely.
And many businesses are now thinking about going back to normal, whatever that means. So there are a few different categories. There are businesses who've completely shut down altogether and haven't been able to trade at all. There's some who've had to scale back, and there's some who've been able to keep segments of their business operating while other segments have had to drop off. So for each of those, there's going to be different considerations. So when you're thinking about reopening or completely or bringing back the business that you had previously, what are some of those key considerations that people should be looking at?
Yeah, it's a good question, David, and you're absolutely right. You know, depending upon your current situation, it will, very much influence the kind of questions that you need to be asking yourself. But if we look at this more broadly, just in terms of some thought bubbles that you really need to start thinking about right now, as we start to come out the other side of this particular lockdown or whatever you call it, there's going to be this internal sort of desire to get back and operating as quickly as possible.
Yep.
The key thing to keep in mind is that the way things used to be are not automatically just going to snap back into place and it'll be business as it once was. So I think the very first thing, and responsibly, the first thing you need to do is look at your finances. Now, of course, David, being an accountant, working with your clients through this particular process, there is a whole lot of stuff here that, you're going to be able to help your clients through. And I'm also hearing that a lot of business owners are not hearing from their accountant, which is very, very concerning for me because, in my opinion, you're one of the most important resources right now. So when we start looking at our finances, for example, as a category, the first thing we need to do is speak to your accountant.
It's true, and it's a well-known fact that when things get tough with people, a lot of people just go into hide mode. They run for the hills, and accountants are the last people they want to talk to. Whereas, as you mentioned, we're the ones who can really help people out and make the right decisions.
Absolutely. Never has it been more important to understand your break-even point.
Yeah.
Are you generating, or are you likely to generate enough revenue as a minimum just to meet your expenses so that you can keep the doors open?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Cash flow forecasting, that becomes absolutely critical now. Not only cash flow forecast or budget for the next 12 months, but the cash flow just for the next 30 days. I mean, things are happening daily at the moment. Changes are happening all the time. So cash flow understanding and forecasting is absolutely critical right now.
Right.
Do you have any cash reserves available at the time? How much? Do you qualify for some of the stimulus packages and so forth out there? And I know that, you're in a perfect position to help your clients navigate through all of the complexities and changes that are happening on a daily basis.
That's right.
Getting it wrong could mean that you end up with nothing. And that's really scary. Do you have access to other funding? If you have debt arrangements in place, have you reviewed those? Can you actually afford to fund a recovery plan?
Yeah.
Have you reset your goals and plans for the next 6 months to 12 months in terms of whatever the new market or new conditions might look like?
And of course, there's the government assistance packages, and have you applied for those? Because some of them are absolutely time critical, and if you don't get in on time, you'll either miss out entirely or in part.
Yeah, absolutely. Another key thing here that I've always done a lot of with my clients is what if analysis. So I think that also becomes really important now. Doing some scenario planning. What if things continue to decline for the next 3 months, 6 months? What sort of impact will that have on your revenue, on your profitability, on your ability to actually just get through and survive? As you mentioned, how will your business perhaps need to change in order to survive through the next 6 to 12 months as well. What parts of your business were profitable, what parts of your business were unprofitable, and therefore should be reprioritized lower down the food chain in terms of opening up or reopening down the track. I had a conversation with a client the other day about a hotel. A hotel with a bistro, some accommodation, a couple of bars, bottle shops, and so forth. And it was interesting that we determined that there was a part of their business that was actually unprofitable. So therefore, the strategy on when and how to reopen that has to be completely reconsidered.
Yeah, that's right. There's an old saying that you should never waste a good crisis. And for a lot of people, this is one of the biggest crises they've ever had to put up with in their entire lives. So let's have a look at some of the psychological issues maybe that are involved in opening up a business. And we know as accountants that to some extent we're pretty much the first responders for the economy. I know I've certainly had a lot of very distressed clients calling in the last few weeks, and it takes a toll on us as well, but we welcome those calls. We're here to help. So when you're thinking about reopening the business, what are the psychological, emotional things that people need to consider?
Well, I think one of the first questions you need to ask yourself is, prior to this pandemic hitting and prior to the conditions changing, were you actually happy running your business?
Yeah.
Because to reopen a business that you were really unhappy in the first place could actually exacerbate your personal internal condition, right? I mean, there's a lot of thoughts going around, and it's quite normal to have a lot of thoughts around, well, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? So, again, some of these issues we need to think more broadly on. Am I prepared to make the changes necessary to reopen and recover the business? Am I prepared for the hard slog? In other words, what lessons have I learned in the past that I might be able to apply now and perhaps enhance or change my business so that sort of thing doesn't happen in the future?
That's true. And also the world that people are going back to is not the world that they left. We all know that there are vast swathes of people now who have been working from home for whom they never thought there was the slightest chance they would ever work from home. The economy is going to change because of that. People are getting accustomed to adapting, doing things in a completely new way, delivering services differently, delivering goods differently, delivering different types of goods. It ain't the same world that we left.
No. And as a consequence of that, the goals that we had, both personal and financial, have also changed. Or may need to be reviewed so that they can be reset and we have that new focus. They say in the absence of having a destination in mind, any destination will do. Well, I can think of a lot of destinations that I would prefer to stay away from right now.
Yeah, true.
So I think the key thing here is to appreciate that certainly if you're still running your business or if you've put your business into hibernation and so forth, there are things you can do to take control, and planning is one of those. You really do need to make sure that you consider your situation and also what the future might look like in detail. And that's where I see that people like yourself and certainly conversations that I'm having, we're able to assist in working through a methodical process to ensure that you give yourself the best possible chance of success.
Yeah. Now this has been a disaster, and disasters need a recovery plan.
Absolutely.
So what does the skeleton of a disaster recovery plan look like for most people?
Look, the disaster recovery process or business continuity process is something that people are now starting to hear a lot about. Prior to this situation, in my experience, I mean, having worked with thousands of businesses over the years, is that a very, very small percentage actually have what we call a business continuity plan. Now, I was fortunate that I worked for a very large organization at one point, and I was responsible for disaster recovery plans, etc. In a nutshell, a business continuity plan is a collection of disaster recovery plans for the critical functions in your business. So if I give you just a quick list of some of those areas, certainly we'll be able to provide more resources together on each of these particular areas and then some. But just to give you an idea, we need to have a component on our funding requirements. So we need to really have control over our financials. Okay, so if we've been vague in the past, we have to make sure we've got budgets in place. We make sure that we've got our profit and loss up to date, our balance sheets. We have a better understanding of all of those internal workings of the business financially.
Critical.
New operational requirements. I mean, one of the obvious ones is hygiene within the workplace. That is going to fundamentally transform businesses. Policies on how people will work together within the business, operations within your business, steps in your processes will need to change.
Yeah.
What do they look like? How will they change? Your people, what's been the impact so far? What is the impact right now? What is likely to be the impact moving forward? And this working from home situation that we have right now is a very real dynamic that we're going to have to work with.
Yeah, that's going to be
provide
huge.
An opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. Necessity is the mother of invention, and there's been a lot of inventing.
Absolutely. Location, is this an opportunity for you to change location? Is it still in an appropriate location? Perhaps you need to change how you consider your geography, if
Do
you
you
like.
need that big commercial building?
Well, correct, and or how much of it do you really need?
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity. You touched on it before, and it's so true. Market changes. How has the market changed? How is it going to change moving forward? Now, we might not have all of the answers, but at least if we're thinking about this sort of thing, we can come up with scenarios in the event that they do follow a certain path. And that's really the importance of doing business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning.
Yeah.
Now, your equipment, so depending upon the type of business you are, perhaps your equipment will need to be reviewed. Inventory, do you have inventory that is able to span, a certain duration of time? Do you need to ramp up or ramp down? Right. What do you actually need to do there?
And just on the subject of equipment, a lot of equipment suppliers of all kinds, they're going to be pushing their products as hard as possible, and there's going to be some great bargains out there. There's also some fantastic tax write-offs available as well for new equipment at the moment.
That's it. That's exactly right. How will your marketing change? What kind of messaging will you need to be putting out into the marketplace? Perhaps you'll start looking at other market segments that have now presented themselves as opportunities that perhaps weren't viable or you weren't ready to receive previously. Yeah. And of course, as you mentioned, pricing. What impact will this situation have on your pricing moving forward? Will you need to reduce your pricing? Can you actually create a premium price in the marketplace and so forth? So as you can see, there's just so much to consider beyond simply opening the doors and hoping for the best. I learned a long time ago that when it comes to business success, hope is actually not a strategy.
Exactly, that's exactly right. Yeah, and as you said, there's an awful lot to consider, and it can be quite overwhelming for people. The best way to deal with that is to get a friend and let your accountant be your friend. Come in, have a look, and we'll go through it in a sensible, logical, methodical way so that you can get the answers that you need to be able to move forward.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for today, Dean. As
Pleasure.
always, I appreciate it. It's been a great talk, and look forward to seeing you again in an episode soon.
Fantastic. Stay safe, everybody out there.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
So that's it for today. As usual, a lot of good advice there from Dean. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.